Interrupt real quick.
No,
Just to be clear, when Greg's talking about those numbers, that's on PPG, AXO, Exalta Clear, not on anything that's aftermarket clear.
Right.
Because that comes down to solid content and other things like that.
Yeah, that's you get what you pay for in life. To Mitch's point, if there's some super ass cheap clear out there, like wow, look how cheap this stuff is, right? Well, there's a reason. Its solids aren't as high. It's not going to cover as well. It's also probably going to fail. Just FYI, at some point, you know. So, does your painter's area look anything like this? If it does, you don't have to admit it. But if any of us have been in this business long enough, you've walked into this paint shop, right? Okay. So, for God's sake, don't ever let it get like that. I'll be honest with you, if it's even 20% like that, I'd be losing my ever-loving mind, right? Like I'd lose it back there. All of that is wasted money. That's all over-mixed material. But boss, I'm going to save that and use it for an undercoat at some point in life. Yeah, right? Yeah. No, you're not. You just over-mixed all that stuff and I paid for it. If you went and dollarized that stuff, you would you'd puke on how much money that just cost you, right? So anyway, 5S'ing your entire shop, certainly your paint shop, cleaning it, organizing it, all that stuff is going to certainly help you. Boy, that popped over real quick. The other things that are in between these pages that are important, like I'm on 98, we already talked about a color library, right? If you aren't doing this at your store right now and forcing your painters to do spray outs and to build a color library, you need to. Both AXO and UIL will be happy to help you try to get that implemented. On the bottom corner, this little visual prep area, that's kind of cool. Do you understand what that shop did right there on this page? It's kind of hard to read his writing. I'm on page 98, sorry, where the color library is. But the corner in the bottom, which I don't know, I don't have it, is a shop in California. And what they're basically doing with that line is they're saying, hey, we finished this out in 500 grit from here to here. Does that make sense? So basically, he's communicating to the painter that, hey, from this black line to this black line, it's 500 grit. That's what I finished it out in, right? It's kind of a cool thing. And guess what? They don't have to have a conversation about it, right? Because it's written there. So when the painter sees it, he doesn't have to go over to the prepper and say, hey, what did you do on this thing? You see what I'm saying? It's already there. He knows. So people are starting to communicate visually as opposed to having to have a conversation. Especially with painters, because they're not always available, are they? I mean, they're in the booth, hopefully spraying, and you know they're not always sitting right there when we need to communicate something to them. So having a way to do it visually, like this shop came up with on that little picture, I think is a good thing. So how do redos affect? I don't know that I have to convince y'all how bad redos are, but let's look at this slide, which it gives you a better dollar idea, right? So if we had job, I thought it was giving you the numbers. Okay, so it doesn't do that. So job one, right, if you look at that column on job one, it was a $2,000, what they're telling you is it was a $2,000 job, right? You see that? Okay, if our material sales were 10%, what's that number? 200, right? If our materials cost was at 6%, right, which is still with basically the average, what's that number, since we don't have calculators, that number is 120, right? That's 6% of $2,000. Our profit, our sub-profit would be $80, profit total $80, and our material gross profit margin on the bottom here would be 40% with this example that I'm using, right? Everybody see that? Okay, so if we had to redo it, that dark gray one, right, well, there would be no sales, so that's a 0. There would be no material sales, so that's a 0, right? But our material cost still stays the same at $120, right, because we had to repaint that car, so we still got material. So there's $120. So our profit sub is minus 120. Does that make sense? And then our profit total is a negative $40, which brings us to a negative 20% material gross profit. Now, what this chart is showing you is we go back, and I wish they would have just given me all the numbers, but as if we go back through and you wrote down 2,000, the 200, the 120, the 80 and the 40, and you did that over and over again as we went down, right? It's the same numbers as we've got on job one. What you're going to find out is you will never actually get back to that 40% gross profit. You see what I'm saying? So I am on the fourth job at the same size job, so the same job mix. Does that make sense to everybody? And by the fourth job after that redo, I'm now at a 25% gross profit. All I'm trying to show you there is how much a redo on just a tiny little $2,000 job does to your paint material profitability, right? So people smarter than me when it comes to math will tell you you actually never get that money back. Other people will tell you that you do basically get it back, or you get to about 99% after you do about 6 jobs of the same size without a problem, right? Without a redo, without an issue. Does that make sense to everybody? So, the redos can really cost you a lot of money. Just in your mind, just as a good rule of thumb, whatever that job size was, it's going to take 6 more of those exact same type jobs to get you back to break even. Yeah. So think about that for a second, right? That's pretty painful. So it's better to slow down and do it right. So if you want to track redos, we have redo trackers. I know painters won't like this, but we have this file. When I implement this kind of thing, or if you were going to implement it at your store, I would advise you to tell your technicians like this that, look, man, this isn't a witch hunt. I'm not trying to corner you, Mr. Painter, and so I can fire you or whatever it might be. Because every redo isn't necessarily the painter's fault, is it? Sometimes we redo cars because they get scratched in reassembly or whatever it might be, right? So what this redo tracker does is it tells me when it happened, what RO it was, who was the tech, what's the reason, and what did we have to refinish, what did we have to redo, right? So if you did get your shop to track that, which I have some out there that do it from a continuous, you've got to convince your technicians that it's a continuous improvement thought process, that we're going to use this as a team to get better, not to fire Jose, right? You know what I mean? Because the first thing's going to be is, holy shit, he's trying to cap me, right? But if we track that stuff, we may find out that the painter's not the problem at all, that we get stuff scratched and there's one guy that probably does it over and over and over again, and that's an opportunity for us to coach that person into putting a better process in place. Or maybe it's me. Maybe I should look in the mirror. Maybe I'm the problem as the manager or owner. Maybe I don't have a process in place that helps us not have that happen, right? So anyway, redo trackers are great. You've got to sell your people on the why, because if they think it's you trying to find write-ups on them so you can fire them, well, they're not going to give you the information. And then, they'll be redoing stuff quietly without you knowing it, right? But that won't help you, so you need to know that. I usually have some technical genius in here that'll tell me about this cause of application errors. But basically, this is some book have you ever seen this thing, Mitch? Cause of application errors?
I have not seen it.
Okay, so anyway, I don't know a whole lot about this deal, but someone thought it was important enough to put in this class. Basically, what it's telling you here is, hey, here's pinholing, filling with body filler, and then it walks you through it. The testing methods, causes of pinholing, causes of pour through hardening, those kind of things, right? Again, this is all technical stuff. I know that thing exists. If you guys wanted that, I'm sure that somebody technical can chase it down for you. You know what I mean? Inventory management. Let's see, did I miss anything? This is Mitch's wheelhouse, right? So what we don't have in here, Mitch, is anything about all those new systems out right now, like I know it's Allied, right? But what's that thing that you're using?
With the Norton has the RSG one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use that over at Mossy, and it just you scan stuff in and out basically.
Yeah.
That way, it keeps the techs in line, it keeps your shop, and you can actually do it now, even though Greg was joking about one sandpaper at a time. Techs don't need to take a whole box of sandpaper, so you can actually customize them now. The one over at Mossy, for example, is 5 sheets of sandpaper. And maybe in particular, it's 1 sheet for the 3,000 grit sandpaper because that is expensive sandpaper. It's $10 a sheet or whatever, so there's no reason to take more than one. But you can literally set up the system so you scan a barcode and it'll say, it's for one item at a time. And I mean, it's on tape, it can be on cutoff wheels, it's everything. And it can be a box, it can be 5 at a time, it can be 1 at a time, it can be anything you want. It can break it down as you see fit. But the cool thing about it too is, and we haven't done it at Mossy, but it can also talk to the front office about anything that you can charge to insurance as well, because it'll send reports up there.
Right.
And you can set the prices in there as well for all of your items that the guys are scanning out. And then what you do is the tech goes back there, puts in the RO number, scans out what he needs to scan, and now he's scanning out 5 sheets. So insurance will pay for 5 sheets for a car. They're not going to pay for a box for a car. So you can start doing little things like that. But and then the bigger thing is reports and other stuff can also be generated as the data gets in there. It's always nice to have data.
Even on individuals, right? So
yeah, well,
so
you can.
For me, like if I can, and look, I'm not again trying to go on a witch hunt, but I promise you, you have body techs that are more efficient at using material than others are.
Yeah.
And kind of to Mitch's point, in this day and age where analytics are just everywhere, right? We should be able to, and that these systems allow you to do, is be able to look at Jose, right, and be like, wow, dude, you are my heaviest user of Allied products, right? Why is that? It may be, again, that Jose fixes every train wreck that I have in that store and I can justify it, or it may not be, right? It may be that he's green and he's wasteful and, it's a coaching, training opportunity for him, right? To make him better, But to be able to look at people individually is huge, because up until this point, you've only been able to look at your store as a whole and be able to say, oh, in my gut, Jose is my biggest offender, but I'm not, 100% sure. I just feel that way, right? So being able to track the stuff is able to do it. Gives you that ability.
And then the nice thing too is it's all in the cloud. So
it's all
and
so then you have history.
Right.
It makes it easier to make sure that you have the right stuff on hand.
And I can do it remotely. So like I work with the shop in terms of, hey, let's set the stock level for this, knowing we'll keep enough in here for a week basically at a time. So I'm not trying to overstock them, and obviously I'll always take stuff back. We don't have a problem with that. But I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody in this room. There's 3 cabinets at Mossy, 2 of them are for the paint team, 1 of them's for the body team. The paint team one is 95% accurate, the body shop one is like 50% accurate. So, again, it's as good as the guys taking stuff out, but it's always the same items. They forget the Bondo, they forget the metal, the glaze, little things like that is what the body techs
the stuff
always
they
forget.
use all day long, every day.
But with that said, the painter, Albert over at Mossy, the toners are always exact, the clear's exact, the hardener, everything that is on the paint shop side is always perfect.
Because they work in unity. The body men are in
Silos.
competition with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
especially when,
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, don't get me started on that, but what causes that? Our pay plans.
Yes.
We promote silos in collision centers. Though I will tell you, there's a lot of people going out there going to team-based pay, and no one wants to hear this kind of crap, but I'm telling you, man, if I opened up a shop tomorrow, I can tell you this. Everybody would be on team-based pay. I would be repair planning. Everybody would get paid with tail lights cross curbs, not because it's Flag Day.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of things I do different now. And don't get me wrong, none of this is to have my people make less money. It would all be geared towards them making more money. But this silo thing that we have, especially our offices, which, where we pay everybody a percent to sale and they only care about their book of business, and body techs are the same. They only care about the jobs that were assigned to them. They don't give a crap about the rest.
They're worried about whatever else.
Well, yeah, they're worried that Johnny got the high front end hit,
yeah.
and I got the side hit beetle, and you're screwing me. That they're worried about, right? But they're not worried about whether that car goes home and Mrs. Jones gets her car back and our kids are safe and blah, 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 right? You know?
Do
They're
they
just
play
not
their
there.
hour?
Yeah. They're just not quite there.
They'll be worried, they'll be worried about if it costs them the extra day of rental we gotta pay.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah. Well, so I'm not gonna get into pay plans, but I'm a big proponent of paying everybody on GP, right? Gross profit dollars, right? So, to your point, if you gotta pay for rental, if you gotta do this or that, of course, it would take a coaching scenario session for you to explain to your people how that adversely affects their paycheck. But if you could get everybody trained on that, all of a sudden, you'd be surprised. Like, I'll give you an example, of course, it's way different in dealerships than it is at some independents, but because at dealerships, our parts people are usually not our people, they're working for the parts manager, right? Same at Nissan.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's still in the paint
he's
side,
assigned
but
to
he's
you.
assigned to it.
He's assigned to you, but his boss is the parts manager, not Matt, right? And so I had that same world, right? But, not me, but I had a guy do this, convince his parts manager to